Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Fresh off the 24 hours of Kyalami for the World Tour, we're back on Monday evenings, just a week since the Ferrari 488 Evo Cup has finished. We're back and we're at Oulton Park for the start of the British GT Championship here at Racing Club International. Welcome along. My name is Ryan Gill, and joining me in the commentary box for the first round of this championship is Joshua Devonshire. Josh, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing absolutely great. Still absolutely shattered from the Kyalami event myself, but you know, there's no rest for the wicked, and obviously we are at Oulton Park. It's hard to think the DLC only dropped about a week ago now, but I'm on board with Ryan McIntosh now with was at the GCAT Racing in the number 15. So, it's a lot of these guys are still very bright-eyed and bushy-tailed from the event. It's really awesome to see everybody in kind of racing today, and that's going to be a really, really good event, Ryan. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, of course, fresh off of 24 hours of racing on the weekend. Not all of the staff have recovered completely either, to be honest. But you know what? Hard at work. We're back here again, and what a fantastic venue to kick off the start of the British GT Championship. And if you're wondering at home, what's going to be the format for tonight and for the rest of the season, in fact, well, we're going to be replicating the 2020 calendar with a 50% race distance for each venue that was on the 2020 calendar. So that means we start here with two 30-minute races at Oulton Park. Next week, we'll be at Donington Park for two 30-minute sprint races as well. Then we'll head over to Brands Hatch, familiar territory for many of these drivers, for a 60-minute race. We'll head back to Donington Park for a 90-minute race. Then we'll go to Snetterton for two 30-minute races. And of course, the season will finish at the home of British Motorsport at Silverstone for a 90-minute finale. So differing lengths, and there's going to be different pit stop requirements for each of these races as well. No required pit stops today for everyone out here. And, well, the keen eye among you will have seen that we've not just got GT3s on track here tonight. We've also got the GT4s out. And you know what? I wouldn't have it any other way for a British GT Championship.
Absolutely not. Obviously, I think we were talking just before we started. Actually, we have quite a populated grid at the moment, and with it being mixed class, there's bound to be some people falling over themselves. And with, as we said before, with the fatigue of the past weekend, it's going to lead to some very interesting racing as we see Kelly and Ryan Meenan going through. I think it's the Shell hairpin, I believe. You know something? Ryan, I don't know about you, but Oulton Park was a massive surprise to me. I always loved the circuit, and I think Kunos did a really, really, really especially good job with this track in this game. It's really well implemented.
Yeah, I think everyone who's come into the British GT DLC as of late has maybe got a newfound appreciation for these circuits, and a lot of people have found out that these circuits are a lot smaller than they probably thought they were. And that's kind of alluded to by the 28-car garage that the pit lane has here at Oulton Park. It's not really built for enormous grids. And the same goes for Snetterton and Donington as well. Very much smaller circuits. And Donington, surprisingly enough, a lot of people don't know, is actually the shortest track of the three new circuits. But practice has come to an end, and we'll be moving on to qualifying in just a moment. And qualifying, well, because it's multi-class, we've got a different format for the qualifying session. It's 20 minutes long, and it's going to be split into three different sections. The first 9 minutes will be dedicated purely to the GT4 cars. No GT3s allowed on track. The middle 2 minutes of the session, so the 10th and 11th minute, will mean that the GT4s can wrap up their lap times. The GT3s can line up at the end of the pit lane, but they are still not allowed out on track. And then the final 9 minutes, well, the GT3s will come out and show us what they've got. And I tell you what, judging by how practice has gone so far, maybe a lot of these guys are just thinking about the race. They're not too worried about their qualifying pace. But McIntosh at the moment, and Kovacs as well in the Porsche, both of them looking supreme as practice comes to an end.
No, absolutely. It's going to be really interesting. And you were on about the qualifying format. It's going to be quite thankful, actually, for the format, because with it being such a short track, as you said, the new tracks are on the shorter side of things. Yeah, obviously, you don't want cars falling over each other, but it's still going to be about trying to find clean air. I wonder who we're going to see out first. There's one of the Astons that we just see going out on screen there, followed by one of the McLarens. So the GT4s are looking to get out into this clean air as they can. So we're sort of sitting back and just seeing what what these drivers can come up with.
Yep, so it was initially Cormac Ryan Meenan that made his way out on track first, but he's been overtaken by the Ginetta of Thiago Lima. So Thiago Lima wasting no time getting that Ginetta out on track, and it's great to see the variety of cars that we have here. for the GT4 Championship. I mean, everyone knows that the Aston Martin and the Porsche in GT4 have primarily dominated in terms of being the go-to cars for basically all the circuits, bar maybe a couple of them. But you know what? We've got a fantastic crop of GT4 cars out here today. Aston Martins, Mercedes, Porsches, Ginettas. There's a BMW, a couple Camaros on the grid as well, McLaren. And, you know, it's always good to see variety on the grid. When we come out to the GT3s later on, there is one particular car that the keen eye amongst you may have already seen on the timing board, but we'll get into that car a little bit later on. And Thiago Lima, he's going to be the first one to come around and start this qualifying session for the GT4s, rocking that lovely orange Ginetta livery with the Fanatec logo on the side of it. And of course, none of us are even sure how the BOP is for any of these cars around this circuit. I drove the McLaren in the British GT beta event. Quite a few people said the Camaro is very, very strong around here, and Thiago Lima going very wide to get this qualifying lap started, but he gets it started nonetheless, comes up towards the timing line, and will go on board with the Ginetta towards Old Hall Corner, turn 1 on the circuit. Don't go too wide, you will invalidate your lap. Easily done around this place. Then the run down towards Dentons and Cascades. Cascades, such a fast left-hander. Got to be careful not to hit the curb on the inside too much. Use as much of the outside curb as you can to run the car as quick out of the corner, then towards Island Bend and coming up towards the Shell Oils hairpin. Fantastic section of the track. Got to get the car hooked up perfectly through here and release yourself towards the first of 2 chicanes on this layout. He comes towards the Britain chicane now, late on the brakes. How much of the curb will he cut? Significant part of the first chicane, and a nice exit to boot as well. The Ginetta looking very, very comfortable on its first lap round. Here it comes to the second chicane now. A bit more tricky for this one. Don't want to go too wide or too on the inside for that second part of the chicane. Don't run wide on the exit here. It will compromise your lap massively and invalidate your lap. Coming up through Hislop, up through the water tower, sorry, getting my corners confused, then up to Druids. Fast right-hander, use as much of the exit curb as you dare, then the run down towards Lodge Corner. Tricky final corner for the end of this lap. Need to be nice and early on the brakes, get the car turned around, don't use too much of the exit curb, you will invalidate your lap. Up and over towards the timing line. Thiago Lima will set the first lap of the session, and it's a 142.687, but it's immediately beaten by Killian Ryan Meaden, a 142.3, who is then beaten by Charlie Crossland with a 142.309.
Oh, these drivers still have another couple of minutes to see what they can kind of pull out of the car. There's a couple of gaps that have closed up. It's not an easy track, as we've just seen. Let's just see Charlie Crossland. I think there was a slight invalidation there, going slightly too wide through Cascades. But no, it's still 5 minutes or so after the session before we think about releasing the GT3s. Look at it, Torben in P30. I think they're about to set their first time. No, it's going to be really, really interesting to see where we can, what we can pull from this.
Well, when I was talking to a couple of the devs, they were telling me that a 141 around here in a GT4 car is incredibly quick. And we're seeing 142s to start off the qualifying session for those at the front of the GT4 grid. So it's not out of the question that a 141 would be a very, very quick lap time around here. Of course, Charlie Crossland on provisional pole in the Aston Martin at this point in time, but Martin Lawrence very, very close behind him as well in the Camaro. And then, of course, Killian Ryan Meaden and James Parker provisionally at least on the second row of the grid. We have 7 different manufacturers in the top 8 so far after the first lap of qualifying. Thiago Lima will come around to finish his second flying lap of the session. He'll bump himself up to 4th. The Ginetta doing very well on that lap indeed. Killian Ryan Meaden still remains 3rd. And a couple of these guys just improving on their times at the moment. Gergo Panka, the furthest back that has set a valid lap time at the moment, a second off the pace. And there is still 2 cars yet to set a lap, Andre Felix and Cormac Ryan Mean. And I say that as Felix does cross the line, he goes 8th. And Cormac Ryan Mean at the moment still on his first flying lap.
It's absolutely amazing to see. I'm looking at the timing sheets now. We've got 3 42.3s with cars obviously still improving. And Charlie Crossan's currently 3/10 up on his Delta. In fact, all the top 3 are up in the Delta at the moment, actually. Matt Samuel is also 0.4 up, or at least he was just a moment ago, as we're on board with Charlie Crossan now going down into the second hairpin. He's currently matching his best, so it's not a whole lot to go. Not long as well to see if we can actually get a 41 as well, but that's still a hell of a lap time.
It definitely is. Cormac Ryan Mean, by the way, has crossed the line, and he hasn't actually set a valid lap time, so the hunt for one of the Ryan Mean brothers to set a valid lap time around here continues. It is quite tricky around here, easy to invalidate your lap. We're looking at Killian Ryan Mean, as I speak of that, in the McLaren at the moment, provisionally 3rd place on the grid. He's up on his time at the moment, crosses the line, goes provisional pole for Side Max Motorworks in the McLaren, putting that car right up there. But like you said, Josh, a lot of these guys up on their time at the moment. Charlie Crossland not up by too much, but James Parker, the closest to the 41 barrier, 42.012. And I kind of get the feeling that it's only going to be a matter of time before we see it broken, and Andre Felix is the one to do it. The Camaro crosses the line. It's a 141.811 from the Chevrolet. And that might be enough.
Well, Ryan, you did say the Camaros are apparently very strong here, and that just kind of goes to prove it. Really also see the BMW in second as well. I know from past events, we've kind of seen that car tend to struggle in some places. So seeing it on the top and seeing it on the front row is really, really quite awesome. But I wouldn't count James Parker out either. He is currently 2/10 up on his Delta, which would be enough to match Felix's time, but whereabouts are we at the moment? We're going through the second chicane, so fair bit of a lot left to go and a lot of time left still to find.
Yeah, and of course, James Parker, incredibly quick driver, part of that 899 Coach Dave Academy Lily on Pace team that finished 6th place in the 24 Hours of Kyalami Invitational Pro Class. Did a fantastic job alongside Joe McCauley and Mikhail Sundstrom and Alexander Guglia, 2 of those drivers also present here tonight. Sundstrom down in 11th, Guglia in the GT3 class. He'll be out on track in a couple of minutes' time. James Parker maybe just being held up slightly by the Camaro in front of him. He'll come up towards the line anyway. He won't set that lap time. It will be invalid, and James Parker will pull off to the side. And that looks like the end of his qualifying session. Felix comes back up towards the line. That lap won't count either. I don't think he was up on his lap time anyway, but he does, of course, have the chance to continue onwards and finish that lap.
I was just about to say, actually, sorry for interrupting. Let's not discount Martin Lorenc, who just went pole going through Lodge Collar. I did notice he was about 3/10 up on his Delta, so that was always possible. But it's almost not actually. It's not actually that far off of Felix's time, less than 1/10 of a second. So our top 2 at least have very, very tightly bunched up.
2 Camaros provisionally on the front row of the grid. I don't think that's going to change either, looking at the way things are panning out at the moment. Jarkko Torvinen has pulled over on the side of the track, and it seems like Killian Ryan Meenen isn't up on his lap time. In fact, he's just put his McLaren in the wall, so that's going to be the end of his qualifying session. Alan Garland as well, he's just come and stopped on track as well. He'll be returning to the pit lane. The GT3s, they're going to now begin to make their way out on track. We've got the 2 Camaros still left to finish their lap times. Of course, as soon as they cross the line, they'll be stopping and returning to the garage. but both of them down on their lap time at the moment, so they'll probably just pull back into the garage. So now it's time for the GT3s. George Boothby here on screen at the moment. He's the winner of the previous Monday championship, in fact, the Ferrari 488 Evo Cup. And if we can get a little bit of a look, if our broadcaster can find the number 898 car of Alexander Guglia, which should be out on track at the moment. There it is. There's the car that a lot of people would have wanted to see out here today, as one of the McLarens just dismisses itself into the left-hand side of the screen. We have a Jag on the grid for British GT, and you know what? It's absolutely fantastic to see this car out on the grid, even if we have no idea how well or poor it's going to do.
You know something? Irregardless of that, I forgot just how good the XK actually looks. Like, in terms of car design and the way, like, it just makes up to the Aston Martin DB9, and I'm getting Aston Martin DBR9 vibes as well, but obviously that's another topic for another day. As Guglia, we see him coming around to start the third sector, getting ready for the flying lap. I just noticed the team name as well. If we can go back to Guglia just really, really quick. Why did I pick
That's fantastic name from Alexander Guglia for that car. He'll come across the line then, and he won't be the first car to start a flying lap. That'll actually be the Mercedes of Toth, I believe, just a bit further up the road. And there is the Mercedes, the number 215. Fantastic shots around Oulton Park, and look how not straight that straight is, coming towards the fast left-hander, and it really does show you how crooked this circuit is as well. Very few parts of this track that you would truly consider straight in, you know, the proper meaning of the word, makes it through the hairpin very nicely. And now towards the first of the chicanes, how much of the curb is he going to cut? Not too much of the inside, but did of course go very aggressive on the first part of the chicane. Now down towards the second chicane, this is where you can lose so much time. We'll go on board here, clips the inside curb there, doesn't touch the grass on the inside, and then has to be nice and tight over here, clips the inside, but avoids that outside curb that can cripple your lap time. And now making his way up and towards Druid's corner, the 215 looking good at the moment, and of course he'll have the rest of this session to go out and set some more lap times. All the GT3s out on track at the moment. All the GT4s are done for the day. Cormac Ryan Meenan will start at the back of the grid. Really did struggle, 1.5 seconds off the pace. But Toth will come up towards the timing line. This lap will be the first for the GT3s. It's a 1:33.7 for the first GT3 car crossing the line. Steele Vason will cross the line. He's 0.3 down. Alexander Guglia 1.4 seconds off the pace in the Jag towards the end of that first lap. But Hirvonen will take provisional pole in the NSX, and it's fantastic to see that car out on track as well. We never got to see an NSX in British GT, unfortunately. We have no idea how well it will do at this circuit in particular, but Leo Hirvonen putting it on provisional pole, but immediately beaten by Kovacs by half a second in the Porsche. We said these Porsches look strong in practice, and Kovacs has put his on provisional pole after the first lap.
Absolutely. I was just actually about to interrupt you and say that half a second is absolutely, it's not an insignificant amount of time, is it? As far as the Jaguar is going, it looks like the Jaguar is struggling a little bit, but again, we've only done one lap. There's still 5 minutes left of quali. There's still plenty of time. Looking at the timing sheets now, everyone seems to be up in the delta, so this is far from the final times as you'd expect. Leo Hirvonen is currently 0.3 up. But it looks like he's also hit traffic as well. It's going to be anyone's. This qualifying session is going to be anyone's game, and given the amount of traffic and how small the track is, it's definitely kind of come into its own. Now, obviously, qualifying strategy is obviously always important, and it's more so maybe than other tracks around here as well.
Yeah, qualifying going to be very, very important at Oulton Park, especially considering the multi-class nature that we have here in British GT. Leo Hirvonen just making his way past one of the Mercedes on the grid, and Alexander Guglia exit stage right. And the Jag, Mikhail Sunster in the chat, his teammate, and also one of the drivers we have here tonight, saying he could tell us what Alex thinks of the Jag, but it's probably not appropriate for the broadcast. So we'll have to hope that the Jag does much better at some of the other British GT circuits. But nonetheless, it'll be fantastic to see out here. And he is unfortunately last at the moment, but he is making his way back out on track now. As we look at Eros in the Ferrari, and interestingly enough, we don't really know how the Ferrari will perform around here because, of course, the DLC uses the 2019 British GT BOP, and of course, those of you will remember there was no Ferrari in the British GT 2019 season, so it will be interesting to see how the Evo does around here, and a few other cars also, like I said before, the Nissan and the Jag on the grid as well that didn't compete in the 2019 season. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how these cars perform. But coming up towards the timing line to finish another lap, Eros up on his lap time by about 1/10 of a second, will cross the line, will improve on his time, but will remain third.
So we have, what was it, Lucas Jack going into third, immediately followed by George Boothby, who also then takes the second spot. That's only a couple of hundredths of a second off of Kovac's time as well. So that half a second gap has been absolutely munched into. With Kovac's Ryan McIntosh has just gone pole as well, full 3/10 faster with a 32.8. And that's McIntosh in another Porsche. So the Porsches seem to have very, very good qualifying pace around here.
Yeah, the Porsches did look very, very good in practice, and of course we're seeing that translate over into the qualifying session as well. And fantastic to see some of these guys running British GT liveries out here as well. Of course, they were included in the new British GT DLC. And of course, that fantastic Porsche livery that you can see there as well. Nice to see some of those liveries. A lot of guys running custom liveries as well out here, but it's always nice to see some new default liveries from real teams making their way into the sim as well. Cloudy out here at the moment in the qualifying session. There was some sun out in practice earlier, and there is a chance of light rain for this race, so I wouldn't be surprised if by the time we get to race 2, maybe that rain does start to become a bit more apparent. Some of these guys will be fed up of rain, considering that they raced in the 24 hours of Kyalami, which a lot of these guys were racing in the invitational split, so they'll have had to go through, I think it was 7 different weather cycles over the course of 24 hours, but they should be fairly used to it by now. Anyway, McIntosh will come up towards the end of the lap again. He'll only get one more flying lap out of this. Coming up towards the timing line, he is up on his time, though. Improves further. 4/10 now between himself and Kovacs. 132.7. Only driver in the 32s.
Yeah, there was at one point in the lap he was about 0.6 of a second up on himself, so I think he's got a lot more pace left in that car. And hopefully that wasn't a little invalidation we just saw there, running a bit wide, come through Cascades. But no, as you were saying, light rain, that's really going to throw a spanner in the works. But if anyone thinks we're going to give these drivers a break from the rain, well, I think they're they're misjudging or underestimating what kind of level of masochist we are here at RCI.
Well, RCI, rain could be imminent. It's one of the phrases that has started to show up around here. I think it was Nicholas Smith came up with that one. I did like that one a lot, and we've kind of clung to that one quite a bit. And there was someone that asked in the Discord, "Is there a chance of rain for this race?" And someone said, "Well, you must be new around here." So we'll have to see how it pans out. There's no guarantee it will rain. There's no guarantee it will stay dry either. It might be dry for these the practice and qualifying. It could be absolutely pouring down for the race. We have no idea. Kovacs up on his lap time at the moment, by the way, up by 0.3 of a second. Wouldn't be surprised if we see some scruffy lap times from these guys as well. Like you said, that fatigue from Kyalami definitely going to play a part, and also the inexperience a lot of these guys have with these circuits. They're not as used to them as they probably would be from some of the other circuits that we have here in ACC, and especially some of the circuits we'll see later on in the calendar, like Brands Hatch and Silverstone. They're much more familiar territory for a lot of these drivers. Kovacs, though, still up on his lap time by tenths of a second. If he can find another tenth of a second, he can remove McIntosh from that pole position. Leo Hirvanen's thrown himself up onto the front row of the grid, but it's all provisional. Kovacs now, he's so close to being 4 tenths of a second up. His lap time is valid at this point. Comes out of the final corner, run up towards the line. Is it going to be pole? No, it isn't. Just misses out 36 thousandths of a second, but we do have 2 Porsches on the front row of the grid. McIntosh taking the first pole position of the season, and a fantastic end to the first qualifying session of this British GT Championship.
Absolutely. It's really awesome to see the Porsches so quick in qualifying, but it's going to be another story completely if they can keep that pace up in the race. Obviously, getting a good start of the rolling start. Actually, no, this is a different kind of start, isn't it, with the British GTs? They do a single file start, right?
I think they do a single file start. I can't quite remember off the top of my head, but I know that ACC doesn't have that implemented, so it will be a 2x2 start for the start of this race. You can see the order of qualifying on there at the moment, and look at that, the personal bests. Leo Hirvonen matching in Sector 1 to McIntosh, and well, interesting to see how the split times for those sectors are split up. And of course, here's the GT4s. We went over these earlier. Martin Lawrence did take pole position from Felix. So we've got 2 Porsches on the front row for the GT3s and 2 Camaros on the front row for the GT4s. And you can see the spread of cars down there as well. We've got 2 Ginettas on the grid, the 2 Porsches at the back. And that's not something we're used to seeing in a GT4 class.
Oh, absolutely not. Obviously, the Porsche is usually a very strong car. And I've fallen back on the Porsche on this track myself in the GT4s, and I didn't hate it. It seems to be a very, very strong car around here, but I mean, obviously, these drivers are a lot better than I, and this is why they're racing and I'm in the booth.
So as we wait for the qualifying session, to tick on over and prepare for the start of the race. They'll only have 3 minutes of pre-race wait time before the start of this race. And here we go. We are on the grid now. So 3 minutes of pre-race wait time for the start here at Oulton Park. It's shorter than usual because we only have, we have 2 shorter races tonight, so they don't need the full 5 minutes that they usually request. The full 5 minutes will be available for the 60-minute and the 90-minute races that we will be having later on in the season. So, of course, 2 30-minute sprint races tonight. The qualifying order for Race 1 and Race 2 is decided by the single qualifying session. We won't have a second qualifying session here tonight. So, of course, that puts a lot more importance on qualifying, doesn't it, Josh? Because obviously it'll decide your grid position for both races. And, if you're someone like Cormac Ryan-Meenan, who's unfortunately qualified at the back of the GT4 grid, you're going into this knowing that you're going to be at the back of that grid for both races here tonight.
Yeah, I was actually just about to say that, but at the same time, it's such a short and it's kind of quite narrow track in places that if I was Cormac, his game plan's probably just going to be to kind of just fall back a little bit, just kind of watch whatever unfolds in front of him, try and keep himself out of trouble, and just try and make up places that way as well, and then just trying to keep some pace, get into a rhythm, and anything is possible. That's the one thing about these cars is that, especially with the mixed grid, so you've got traffic kind of coming into strategy. And obviously, we don't have the pit stop strategy as well with no mandatory stop. It's not a game over for Cormac at all. He could pull a lot out of this. It'd be really, really cool to kind of see his progress with this race, with the 2 races actually, with the 2 sprint races.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Cormac Ryan-Meenan, look, I mean, we know that Killian is definitely the more recognized driver around the ACC community, racing for Sidemax Motorworks, but I mean, I've driven against Cormac myself. It was about a year ago in one of the actual Vision Leagues. He's a very, very good driver. He's a very good defender as well. Overtaking Cormac Ryan-Meenan for position, not an easy task to do. And that's not to say Killian's a slouch either, but I think Killian is definitely the more aggressive driver. He's the driver you wouldn't want behind you if he's coming up to get past. Unfortunately, what I've noticed, Andre Felix, who qualified second in the GT4 field, seems to have disconnected on the grid. He has managed to reconnect, but it seems he's been placed at the back of the grid, so he'll be starting behind the two Porsches for race one. So you can see the grid on screen here at the moment. You'll see that gap halfway down the grid. That is where the missing Camaro would have been. And you can see that he's all the way at the back of the grid now. So unfortunate for Felix that his disconnection means he's going to have to start race one at the back of the grid. But the fortunate thing, I guess, about the one qualifying session is that as long as he doesn't disconnect on the grid for the second race, he will start P2 for the second race.
Absolutely. Is this like a reverse commentator's curse, by the way? You know, we talk about Cormac Ryan being at the back of the grid, and usually something bad befalls the person you're talking about. But in this case, he benefits. So that's something.
We're inventing the reverse commentator's curse, and well, it's all about innovation here at RCI. And they pull away for their formation lap. Nice and sunny out here for the first race of the championship. Very different to the conditions that they faced out in the real world 2020 season for the start of the championship. You can see Andre Felix there, and great to see GT4 cars and GT3 cars back on track together. I can't be the only one that has missed the sensation of seeing multi-class grids. And of course, we're going to have much more in terms of multi-class grids coming up. We've got much more in terms of British GT coming up as well. If you haven't seen it, we have a 3 hours of Donington Park solo coming up this weekend. So that means that all the drivers will have to do 3 hours on their own. Not difficult for some of these guys, I'm sure, but for a lot of people, it's going to be a brand new challenge to do a 3-hour endurance race on their own. We have a 6 hours of Oulton Park race coming up as well in a few months' time. And I'm really excited for that race. And that one's going to be interesting as well, because we're allowing teams of 1 through 6 drivers, and that is only open to GT4 cars as well. So we could be seeing some people try an Ironman a 6-hour at Oulton Park in a GT4. And that's going to be absolutely fantastic to see. But we're here for the British GT Championship. We'll, of course, only be going to British circuits for this championship, replicating the 2020 season, as the 2020 season did not go to Spa, which is usually a feature on the British GT calendar. And all of these guys preparing to go 2 by 2 for the start of this race. Live stewarding here for the top split, for the pro split. We also have 5 other splits running today. Massive appreciation from the community for this new series. And those splits, they're obviously going to be run as they are, post-stewarding available for them, but a massive amount of drivers, over 200 drivers involved in this championship across all 6 splits, and multi-class racing available in all 6 of them. It's great to see. And what's also great to see is that this race is about to get underway. The British GT season here at RCI is about to kick off. We've got 2 Porsches on the front row of the grid. It's McIntosh and Kovacs. And the British GT season is live. Someone's got a drive-through penalty at the start of the race. It's Felix at the back of the grid in the Camaro. Hervenen's been caught up in the Honda. Down at turn 1, he's gone spinning. He's out of the way. There's a Ginetta wide as well. And Kovacs has managed to take the lead before the 3rd corner right at the start of the race.
That's an absolute shame. Hervenen did a really good job getting the car up there in qualifying. He doesn't seem to have collected anybody else. He's at the back of the grid though, so he's got to fight his way through the GT4s. Going back to the front of the grid, it looks like we have one of the Audis in front, unless my lap time's broke. So I think unless my time is broke. Actually, no, there's still Kovacs in front. So yeah, my deltas have broken just for a moment there. Very hectic first lap already, and we're not even done with it.
No, Kovacs taking a very, very early lead away from McIntosh there and asserting himself. He narrowly missed out on getting that pole position, and he wants the first race win of the season as they go through the second chicane. And that purple Porsche making its presence known. There is an Audi towards the back of the grid. Fekete in the number 37, and he's a bit further back from the GT4 field as well. So something has definitely happened with him towards the start of the race, and much like Leo Hirvonen, he's going to have to carve his way through the GT4 field a lot earlier than he would have planned. But towards the end of the first lap of the race, Kovacs leads us across the line, but Martin Lawrence in the GT4s, he does lead. And of course, Felix way further back on the grid. Meanwhile, Eros, who had a pretty good qualifying session, almost losing it, coming up towards the start-finish straight, just getting on the bumps. An incredible save from the Ferrari there.
Yeah, the bumps will unsettle the car quite a bit. Obviously, the bumps around here are something to be reckoned with. It's not a smooth track at all. See Felix Swift trying to make a move on the inside of the Aston, thinks better of it, going through, right into the shell hairpin, but he's all over the back of him. He wants pass, but the Aston's not giving him much. Lukasak isn't giving him much of a chance to really breathe and try and get past, but let's see Hirvonen still making his way through the field as well. Watching Boothby coming up behind, was it Stelvessen? Very, very close going into the first hairpin. Oh, that's the second chicane, sorry. Everything's still tightly bunched. Hirvonen is still making his way through the GT4 fields through the GT4 field now.
Yeah, Leo Hirvonen, unfortunately, with a massive task on his hands early on. But up at the front, Kovacs may have got the jump on McIntosh at the start. But I tell you what, McIntosh has got the pace to stick with the Porsche up front. So it's going to be Porsche versus Porsche by the looks of it for this first race of the season. Pulling away from the Mercedes behind. What they've got to make sure they don't do is get themselves caught up in an incident very early on in this race. A second race to come, of course, but you want to get a solid finish down for the first race of the season. Half points available for each race here today, whereas it will be full points for the 60-minute and 90-minute races that we'll have later on in the season. So these races here, if you don't have a great race in one of the two events tonight, it's not going to be, doom and gloom for your season. Leo Hirvonen, maybe one of the drivers just considering that now, that half points here today means that as long as he can get that car to the finish, he can get a solid position under his belt as Martin Lawrence goes very, very wide at turn 3. It means that your season is not going to be over yet. Overtaking difficult around here, but George Boothby's managed to get it done on the Aston Martin of Steel Vason. And the 488 Evo Cup champion from last Monday already making moves this early on. Interesting to see him in a McLaren this time around, and of course, doing very well, making his way up to 4th at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. He was a very strong contender for qualifying as well, so seeing him kind of make his way up the field is really, really good to see as we're watching Joachim Stesnes in the Porsche. A little bit of a train going on, going down through towards Lodge.
Yeah, definitely seems so, but it's one of the problems that you can get on this circuit. It is very difficult to overtake around here. The circuit doesn't widen in too many of these places, and that can, of course, cause major issues. We're looking at Charlie Crossland now chasing down Killian, Ryan, Meenan, James Parker, of course, trying to chase down after the top of the Camaros in Martin Lawrence. A bit further back, we can see Harry Conway from Triple R, and he's got the likes of Gergo Panker and Jarkko Torvinen for FFS Racing just in front of him. Some of these guys in little bits of pockets, and Andre Felix has decided that drive-through penalty he received at the start of the race for being out of position on the grid is merit to probably not continue for the rest of this race, and he's going to look forward to race 2 instead.
Yeah, I really, really hope he continues with that. It's a shame it happens, but sometimes that can be racing. Looking at Ekete, actually, Fekete, sorry, just speak of the Devil soon, as I mentioned. Still at the back of the grid in the Audi GT3, so I wonder if some kind of misfortune has befallen them.
See a little bit of a replay here. Does he? Ooh, nicely saved. Nicely saved. That was half going around at one point.
Yeah, that could have been a lot worse than it was. Obviously, the Audi's not the easiest car in the world to drive, but still interesting to see how they got so far back. But a bit of a mountain to climb as we're back with McIntosh in second place, still hot on Kovacs' bumper, going to complete another lap, going into T1. Not quite close enough for a move, but I think he's just biding his time. There's still 23 minutes left to go, so maybe he's waiting for a mistake, just trying to get into a flow, get into a rhythm. They're pulling away from the rest of the field, so traffic isn't going to come into play just yet, but it's only a matter of time.
Yeah, meanwhile, Svenček trying to get past Stenazes at the moment. The Bentley on the grid, the only Bentley on the grid for split one. And that enormous car will probably have as much trouble as anyone getting past people here today. Shame to see no Lamborghinis out on the grid in split one. Definitely a car that did do quite well in the real World GT, British GT Championship, except for maybe Donington Park. And looking a bit further back as well, Charlie Crossland all over the back of Killian Ryan Meenan, looking one way, looking the other. And he's in the Aston Martin. Traditionally, I've seen him driving the Porsche Cayman, so nice to see him going for a different car here today. And he's hot on the heels of that McLaren at the moment. So they come towards the hairpin at this point in time. It's still, as it stands, out in GT3 at the front. Nothing happening there at the moment. And on the inside line, Charlie Crossland, slight tap with Killian Ryan Meenan. He'll lose a place to Thiago Lima as well. And of course, the stewards will look at that. I'm not sure if there'll be too much doing there. Killian was very, very wide, and Charlie was just alongside. Yeah, there's not much doing in there. A little bit of a tap, but realistically, Charlie was already through. And Killian Ryan Meenan, just a little bit of a mistake. But Fesfox in the chat bringing out an interesting point. McIntosh maybe trying to pressure Kovacs into a mistake here by picking up some track limits.
That is actually a really interesting strategy. Kind of big brain, if you ask me. He's not really giving him much room to kind of breathe at all. Neither of these drivers are. They're quite obviously really, really close.
You don't get much room to breathe around here anyway, as it is.
That's very true, actually.
This is definitely one of the hardest circuits. Well, I mean, one of the hardest circuits brought into ACC. Never mind on the British GT calendar. And that's, you know, even ignoring the bumps and the horrible curbs around this place, it's, you know, it's very, very tricky, very twisty as well. Always got to be focusing on the next corner, very little room to relax. But Kovacs still doing a very, very good job at the moment. 1.6 seconds between them and third place. The gap has kind of stabilized at the moment, and Boothby is falling back from them as well. Meanwhile, Killian Ryan Meenan on the inside of Thiago Lima, trying to get past that Ginetta. He's going to be forced to the outside of the hairpin. Very well defended by Thiago Lima. Ooh, and Stephenson in the Camaro, just getting tapped behind by Jarkko Torvinen. Fortunately, it seems that Torvinen did back out of it, and Stephenson didn't quite get turned around. You can just see a little bit of a tap there. Causes a bit of a traffic jam behind with the McLaren, but nothing too bad done there, and just kind of shows you the tricky nature of this circuit. Meanwhile, Leo Hirvonen has decided to park the car as well. I think he's probably estimating that he's not going to make up any more places in this race. Meanwhile, Toth under pressure and getting overtaken as well, and that's going to be the Aston Martin of Lukaszek moving up ahead of him and into 13th place.
A lot of action all in one lap there. So with Thiago Lima right on Crossland's bumper going through Dia's lead. Starting the lap, it's close enough that he could potentially make a move here, but I think he's got to think better of it by this time. And again, just finding a rhythm around Oulton is, especially when you're in traffic, finding a rhythm is like kind of like the key to kind of succeeding. William Stevenson has been overtaken by Torvinen as well. Obviously, we saw that little bit of a tap in the last lap going through the hairpin. So at some point, Torvinen has gotten through. You see the battle with Thiago Lima and Comet Ryan meaning Killian, sorry. Kind of gone in the background there as well with Alan Garland. Kind of balancing it a little bit, going into the hairpin. Can he make a little bit more time up? I think he can, but back with the leaders. McIntosh is still pressuring Kovacs pretty well as he goes a little bit wide, gets a little bit of a better run on the exit.
Yeah, the two Porsches still going head-to-head up at the front of the order. They are gapping the Mercedes behind. The gap had stabilized somewhat, but Despres now starting to fall off the back of these two. He's dropped 0.8 of a second. And one of the admins here that we have, Mike Jones, he's just whispering in the little commentary chat that we have here. He said the GT4s are going to barely get caught up by the GT3s, and they will catch them at least once in this race, and they're going to catch them more towards the end of the race, which is going to be so interesting. And there is so much going on, and this is one of the fantastic things about these small, tight circuits, is that the racing on them often very close. Even if it is difficult for overtaking, cars do tend to get stuck together in little groups like this one that we're seeing here at the moment. Harry Conway on the back of this group, which has the likes of Stephenson and Panka in it just in front of him, and you can even see Jarkko Torvinen in there as well, and Torvinen has, of course, got past Stephenson at some point in time. Fekete in the Audi. Has he managed to avoid the wall? Oh, just clips the back of the barrier at the exit road. And that Audi, well, he's almost gone around once at that particular point of the circuit. He has gone around this point in time as the leaders do come past. And it looks like for the first time so far in this race, Kovacs has some sort of breathing room.
Yeah, there's a bit of a gap formed. I'm not sure how long that will actually last for, given how quick these guys have been. Porsche's currently in a kind of a race of their own. There's still a 2-second gap to Despres in the Mercedes behind in the 237. Going through the chicanes just a little bit, as we see Toth is under pressure from, is that Lukaszek? Actually, no, I think he's gotten by at some point. There we go, the timesheets have just updated.
He's got back through.
Very close. And a little bit of a wiggle on exit there, but I think Toth has just made that move stick pretty well. Guglia has made some spaces up in 11th as well in the Jaguar, just kind of making steady pace. A little bit off the Bentley, but the field's definitely shuffling around a little bit. That's what makes this track interesting, as we see Harry Conway still on the back of that train, looking on the outside, but not quite close enough to make that move stick. So a lot going on all at once.
Yeah, and we've also got a penalty out for Joachim Stenazes at this point in time, 15-second penalty. I'm waiting to hear from the stewards as to what exactly that'll have been for, but considering that both Fekete and Leo Hirvonen went round on the first lap, I don't think it's out of the question to say he was probably involved in one of those two incidents. And I think he was. Maybe was he involved in the Leo Hirvonen one? I can't quite remember if it was a McLaren that or a Porsche, sorry, that turned him around. Either way, on the back of Gergo Panka's McLaren, and what a train this is at the moment that we have here to watch. Gergo Panka, he's leading the way, isn't he, at the moment with this little group. We've got Harry Conway behind, then Matt Samuel, Sundstrom, Garland, Cormac, Ryan Meenan, and the leader has now caught up to the back of these guys. It's time for the GT3s, or at least the leader of the GT3s, to start lapping the GT4s, and this is where traffic management becomes so important in multi-class racing.
Absolutely, this is where the race gets as if the race couldn't get more interesting. It gets more interesting as it's disrupting the McLaren train just a little bit, as we see Harry Conway just going around the outside. The GT3 is disrupting that little train. The McLaren moves just as Panka just moves just to the outside, lets the lead car through. And I think McIntosh has just lost a fair bit of ground there, so but still a lot of the GT4 still to go, so a lot can happen. There's not really a lot of space in this track to let lead cars by, though, Ryan, is there?
No, there isn't, but of course the way it usually goes in multi-class racing, the faster class has to find their way around, the slower class should stick to their line. That's the rules of the road when it comes to multi-class racing, and, well, it just seems that Kovacs caught the traffic at the right part of the circuit, easily made his way past a lot of these guys. Peter Krober back in the pit lane as well. It looks like his first race of the season might be over. We're not entirely sure what happened to that Mercedes. And there's Andy Boardman, who's carrying some damage on the number 69 as well. So there's definitely been things happening around the circuit that we haven't quite been able to catch with all the action going on at the moment. You can hardly blame us for missing a few things going out on circuit, but here we go. A few guys just trying to find their way past. We had a car off on the grass there. I'm not entirely sure if it was a GT3 or a GT4 car. And George Boothby trying to make his way through at the moment. We've got a Mercedes just slightly off. That might be Mikael Sundstrom in the 899. And my word, all of this going on at the same time. The 996 Porsche just ahead. That's Matt Samuel. You can see a replay here of what's going on with Mikael Sundstrom. Is he going to dive on the inside? Ooh, just lost it. Was the car going off? And takes evasive action, takes to the escape road and rejoins behind Matt Samuel. Very well done there from Mikael Sundstrom. He'll, in fact, perhaps join behind Cormac Ryan Meenan as well. But very well done there by Sundstrom to avoid an accident.
Yeah, that's absolutely brilliantly avoided. After watching the Saul Bentley, is that from the back of Stesner's car. Going through T1, looks like a little bit of a gap is starting to form, but Stensner's does have that 15-second time penalty as well, so the Bentley's got some breathing room. It's got, it just knows all it has to do is kind of stick close. As we're seeing James Parker, I believe, still second in the GT4s. We have the lead car and the lead Porsche starting to interrupt the top two of the GT4s as well, going to the chicane. There's a bit of a sandwich going on. I think it's best for everyone. Yeah, there's space being left by, but very tight. Very tight, but Kovacs...
Oh, but that's cost Lawrence massively, though. And here comes James Parker in the BMW. Martin Lawrence going to force him to take to the grass, but he's going to try and retain the inside line. And Martin Lawrence having none of it. The Camaro and the BMW, two of the biggest cars on the GT4 grid. Now here comes second place McIntosh in the Porsche. He wants to get through these guys. James Parker said, you're going to have to go around the outside, mate. I'm battling for the lead of GT4 here. And my word, how incredible was that? Martin Lawrence starting to get put under pressure from James Parker in the M4. We don't often see the M4 towards the front of the grid, but James Parker doing wonders with that car at the moment. Alan Garland, meanwhile, he's got GT3 traffic coming through, and I think that is in the McLaren just up ahead. That's Ruppert in the McLaren with Stenazas behind in the Porsche. Stenazas, by the way, 15-second penalty for being involved with car 215 at the start of the race. An accident between the 30 and the 215. That was Toth earlier on. So he's received a 15-second time penalty for that. Both of the incidents at the start of the race, considering the 108, the 778, and the 115, all given a warning.
Yeah, it's obviously not what you want to see, cars crashing out in the first lap, but it is part of racing, unfortunately. As we see William Stevenson in the pits as well, see something has befallen them too. Seen a lot of cars dropping out of the first race, but as we see, James Mackey's right on the back of Lawrence. And Steve Boothby just trying to make its way through. These guys are just trying to have a battle, guys. Just leave them to it. Leave them alone. They know what they're doing. Parker's great to look down the inside, trying to take advantage. It's not quite going to work. Settling down into more of a rhythm and just trying to push it. But Lawrence into maybe going wide, making a bit of a mistake. There's still GT3s to come. It's not over for these guys just yet. There's a lot that's going to interrupt the fight for the GT4s, I think.
Yeah, and of course the fantastic news for everyone here watching at home is that we have another 30-minute race to come this evening. Just over 9 minutes left of this one as Thiago Lima closes on to the back of Killian Ryan Meenan. And I don't think, well, I think the most comfortable drivers at the moment out on the circuit are the two Porsches up front.
Yeah,
They've got all the room in the world at the moment, as we see. I think this is Rupert, is it? Just trying to get past some of the GT4s as well. Of course, this will split up the GT3s quite a bit, and this is one of the reasons as to why it's great that we do have two sprint races here tonight. To make sure that, you know, they don't get split up for very long, and of course, we have the chance to go again. Meanwhile, James Parker is still pressuring the likes of Martin Lawrence. Wouldn't be surprised if that BMW does have a good go. Here comes the big Bentley, though, of Schrencek. And the little Ginetta move out of the way. Two British manufacturers coming through! And you can't go through there. And that's going to be off the circuit for the Bentley. Just not enough room for that car. I don't think there would have been enough room for any of the GT3s to get through there. And Killian Ryan Meenan, he just stuck to his line. The Bentley just didn't really have anywhere to go. And, well, that's given a place to Alexander Guglia in the Jag. And he's made himself up into 9th place. Not doing too bad at the moment. Meanwhile, Stenaz is still chasing Rupert.
That is it. Guglia showing that consistency around here and just not getting caught up in other people's accidents is so key around Oulton Park. You don't have to be necessarily the quickest car on the grid to do well. Making was it Rupert making his way around some of the GT4s. Stesner's right on his bumper though, but again that 50-second time out, he's going to come into. He's going to look on the inside of T1. He's going to shut the door. He gives him space. Stesner has to fall back, but he pushes himself wide and almost loses it. He does lose it. Oh no! Oh, it's Rupert dropping out of 6th place if he can't. Yeah, Rupert dropping out of 6th place. He's. Never sketchy rejoin, but he seems like he's going, and that's Eros just pushing it way past as well, which means that Rupert will rejoin back in 14th, just ahead of Boardman. So, wow.
Action happening all around the circuit. Game for Rupert. Obviously, it was doing incredibly well, and of course, now having to settle for whatever he can. James Parker, in the meantime, he's using as much of the circuit as will be made available to him, but it is still Martin Lawrence that leads the way in the GT4 class. And, well, we can't take our eyes off this at the moment. I mean, this has been absolutely fantastic. Almost 24 minutes down of the first race. Here comes Stenazis in the Porsche. Of course, still carrying that 15-second time penalty. That'll be added on to the end of his race time. See another one of the Porsches just in the background as well, trying to make its way through. And James Parker, this is going to be very, very tricky. Martin Lawrence just putting the car in the right place at the right time. James Parker trying to go around the outside, but look at the drive that the Camaro has. James, though, completely committed over the bumps, not willing to give way. But Martin Lawrence will force him to the outside again. It's only race 1 of the championship, lads, but they are definitely getting elbows out this early on. James Parker forced to ride the curb, but he will still be made to go to the outside. That Camaro, it's wider than a Bentley at this point in time on the circuit.
At this point, I think the Camaro is the circuit width. This car just wants to get through. It doesn't want to interrupt. It's like...
Oh, and Guglia's off.
That's it. The Jag's just like, you know what? No, I'm going to sit back. I'm just going to watch this because it's just way too much fun. It's obvious. Oh, almost stepping. I feel really, really sorry for Guglia for that because he made such good pace, splitting the top two GT4 cars. It's really benefited Laurent quite a bit, but I don't know for how long. Just watching Harry Conway is catching the back of the little paint train. That is, I think that is the Pancras McLaren in front with Torvenen's Ginetta. This battle's been going on throughout most of the race now, I think, Ryan. So everyone's been super consistent, and it's been absolutely non-stop.
It has been completely non-stop, and we can only hope that the second race is exactly the same. Meanwhile, Kovacs and... Oh, Felix has got back out on track, by the way, despite the drive-through penalty. And that Camaro is going to go into the wall, hits the soft barrier, then hits the hard barrier. And that will be race over for Andre Felix did come out back on the circuit, and just unfortunate. Yeah, just clipped the grass, lost the car.
Yeah, just tried to give
Really
room for
unfortunate.
Kovacs getting through there, and yeah, as you say, just really unfortunate. Just a little bit of grass is all it takes.
So James Parker, he's going to continue to hunt down Martin Lawrence. He doesn't care if GT3 cars are going to get in the way at this point in time. Meanwhile, Gergo Panka has made his way past Matt Samuel just for a moment. Harry Conway has also managed to get to... Oh, actually, no. I think Gergo Panka may have lost some time. Because he was... Matt Samuel was definitely further behind those two. Meanwhile, Martin Lawrence still has James Parker behind. Both of these cars running very similar liveries. Dark at the front, a white rear, and a red stripe on both of them. If it wasn't for the fact one is black and one is blue, and that they're two different cars, you would think these two are teammates at this point in time.
Absolutely. But both cars, as you said before, even like similar profiles, very similar sizes, they are huge in their class. So Lawrence just trying to kind of let the GT3 spy try and gain that advantage. He has made a bit of a gap to Parker, but given the way Parker's been driving, that gap is not going to last long. It's only 2 minutes left. I wonder if we're going to see some kind of desperation to try and get by, to try and take the GT4 win. As we're on the back of Eros's Ferrari, looking at Rupert going through Diaz Leap, going into T1. Rupert is quite a bit back though, so these guys have done really well to kind of keep it just outside of the top 10.
Well, Eros has had to take avoiding action twice in this race, and I kind of get the feeling with the way everything is shaping up, he might have to do so again in race 2. Meanwhile, Matt Samuel wants his place back from Gergo Panka. Lovely flash of the lights there from the Porsche. And he's going to see if he can take him on the inside. Nope, nothing doing quite yet. And just 2 minutes of this race remaining. It's still as it was out front. Kovacs in the Porsche, 5 seconds in front of McIntosh, and then 4.2 seconds back to Despres. Those are the top 3 in the GT3 class. Meanwhile, the lead for GT4, Martin Lawrence, chased down still by James Parker. Is it too late for James Parker? Has the traffic played against him in this first race? With the GT3s coming through, I'm not sure even if he can catch right up to the back, and Martin Lawrence has made a mistake. He's made a mistake. That's cost him a lot of time. He's come back on the track. Is he going to ease off and let Parker catch up to him? I think he might, but either way, Martin Lawrence, not really ideal. Maybe just a bit too late on the brakes, bit of an early turn-in, and just having to take to the grass, almost losing it a bit on the grass. James Parker has caught up to him, right back up to him, by the way. So he has definitely lost a significant amount of time. James Parker, in fact, in the final corner, going to try and go around the outside again. We've seen this move once, not really pulled off. There's an Aston Martin GT3 coming through as well. But Martin Lawrence forces him to the outside for turn 1 again. Is James Parker? Ooh, they touch!
Just a little bit of a kiss on the front. A little bit of a kiss.
Just over the front. James Parker's eased off, by the way. He doesn't want to take the position like that.
No, it's really, 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 really good to see. But oh, that was almost 3 wide into T1. That was. Oh.
Absolutely fantastic stuff. Leader on the final lap, by the way, as Kovacs does initiate the end of the race sequence. The GT4s will have 1 more lap after this one. So James Parker, this is the penultimate lap for him to get a move done on the likes of Martin Lawrence. And of course, he's got to get past cleanly. Meanwhile, Harry Conway, he's half a second behind the little Janetta of Jarkko Torvinen. And he's on the penultimate lap as well, so he hasn't got very long if he's going to make his way through. Alan Garland recovering as well, just behind the likes of Mikhail Sundström. And Cormac Ryan Meenan as well, who has gained a few places today through misfortune of other cars. And that has kind of made up for a bit of his poor qualifying that he had earlier on. And he'll just be hoping that he can have, similar fortunes in the second race. Final lap for those two GT3s on track. The GT4's just about to start their final lap of the race. Here is Kovacs, the race leader, coming into the final sector. It's been, well, pretty much a perfect drive from the number 5 for the first race of the season. He did exactly what he needed to do. He dealt with the pressure from McIntosh. He took the lead.
Parker has just gotten past. Lawrence. So, well, Lawrence just ran a little bit wide going into T1. I don't know if we could see that one again, but the fight for the lead of the GT4s has just taken a bit of a turn on the final lap. Sorry for cutting you off there, Ryan. That was a bit of a development.
No worries, we got a replay here, courtesy of Jake Coombs, our broadcaster, and Martin Lawrence just going wide on the grass, and that's lost him the time. And that's how James Parker got through. Meanwhile, Kovacs did, of course, cross the line to win the first race of the season. McIntosh in second and Despres in third, as they were. No surprises, no changes there. But interesting, James Parker does capitalize on a Martin Lawrence mistake and manages to put that BMW up into the lead of the GT4 class on the final lap of the race. The pressure just a bit too much. Rupert, will he find his way past the likes of Eros on the final lap? No, he won't. The Ferrari will cross the line in 12th place. It'll be 13th for the 71 McLaren. Just to run through some of the rest of the order: George Bishby in 4th, Steele Basin 5th, Stenazas 6th. Of course, he does have that time penalty to be added on at the end of the race. Wilmoth, Toth, Svenchek, and Guglia rounding out the top 10 in the GT3 class. James Parker, well, he'll cross to win the GT4 class in the first race of Oulton Park here this evening. Martin Lawrence in 2nd place. Charlie Crossland in 3rd as well. His race quietened down after a while. Killian Ryan Meenan in 4th. Thiago Lima 5th. Torvinen will hold off Conway for 6th and 7th. Panker will finish 8th. Matt Samuel 9th. And Cormac Ryan Meenan from the back of the grid rounds out a top 10 finish in GT4.
It's absolutely thrilling race. I think there's no other word. I think Parker and was it Kovacs? They didn't put a foot wrong the entire race. Kovacs just kind of got on with what he needed to do. He built that gap. He didn't fall to the pressure that McIntosh put him under in the first stages of the race, and then dealt with the traffic absolutely beautifully. And Parker just pushed Lawrence the entire race as well into that final lap mistake, and just capitalized on it really, really nicely. Now, I don't think you could ask for more from a race, can you, Ryan?
Well, I think the only thing we can ask for now is that race 2 is just as good, but maybe that is asking for a bit too much. You can see the race 1 results on screen now, and of course, James Parker, fantastic, taking that win on the final lap of the race. We'll head over to the grid for race 2 of the championship. Of course, they'll have 3 minutes to prepare themselves. And, and something I am realizing. Oh, this is rather unfortunate for Andre Felix. Andre Felix is still at the back of the GT4 grid. I would have thought that after disconnecting on the grid for race 1, he would have been put back in his original qualifying position, but that doesn't seem to have been the case. So he'll start at the back for a second consecutive race. And that's not great for Andre Felix, because judging by his qualifying, he definitely had the pace to perhaps compete with the likes of Martin Lawrence and James Parker.
Absolutely. That's actually quite a shame to see. I wonder if when he rejoined the server, it just kind of made like a new instance, and therefore like kind of like a no qualifying time set and just set to the back of the grid. But
entirely possible.
But like we saw Cormac, and like I said before, just take advantage of the carnage in front of you. Just avoid it. Try not to get caught up in it, and just try to capitalize on it for your own personal gain. So anything is possible, and with Felix's pace, I have no doubt it's going to be quite thrilling to watch.
Yeah, of course, Felix unfortunately got caught up with he got a drive-through, didn't he, for being out of position on the start of the first race, and that kind of set the tone for race 1 for him. He's going to have to start from the back for race 2, which is very unfortunate for him, considering how good he was in qualifying. But like you said, he's he's just got to look up and onwards. He's got to try and do the best he can. And of course, that Camaro has pace around here. We've seen from Martin Lawrence the kind of pace that car has. And of course, he qualified second, so the pace is there. And some of the other cars as well, they're going to be looking for a much better race this time round. Leo Hirvonen in particular, the 247 Honda, who I think he spun himself, didn't he, at the start of the first race into turn 1, and rather unfortunate for the Honda driver. And a few other guys, of course, didn't have a great race either. So some of these guys going to be looking much forward to this race as well. No rain for the second race either. It's going to be completely dry, nice and sunny. Of course, the time of day has changed. You will have noticed we're a bit later on in the day now. It's just past 4 o'clock in the evening. So we've got some lovely, change in lighting conditions for the start of the second race.
Yeah, it's quite beautiful to see, Ryan. The track temperature is still 27 degrees ambient, still 21, so there's no real change there, if any, at all, from what I observed in the first race. And we're about to start the formation lap with, I think McIntosh did qualify on pole. I almost, that race was so gripping that I completely forgot the order for just a second. So I wonder if McIntosh is going to be able to defend the position this time around. He's definitely going to be looking to and try to take the win for this race as well. I think he only just got unlucky with the traffic. As we said, Kovacs didn't put a foot wrong. So as you said, Ryan, a lot of the drivers are going to be looking to right the wrongs of the first race and try and pull it around and have a better one.
Yeah, and of course, next week they'll be looking forward to their first taste of Donington Park in this championship as well. We'll have 2 rounds at Donington Park this season, as the Real World British GT Series does follow. They have 2 sprint races there, and then of course a longer endurance race. We're running at 50% distance, of course, and it's kind of nice that we can replicate the whole championship in 50% distance, and it fits quite nicely within everyone's evening. But a 90-minute race will be held out at Donington Park later on in the season. But it'll be 2 30-minute races next week at the lovely park, Donington Park in the East Midlands. Meanwhile, all the way back here at Oulton Park, it's going to be a very, very interesting second race. The question is, for McIntosh, can he prevent Kovacs from getting in front of him on the second start? Because if he can prevent Kovacs from getting in front of him, it'll kind of be an opposite way round to how race 1 was. And I think the crucial point for Kovacs in race 1 was once he caught the GT4 traffic and managed to put a couple of seconds between himself and McIntosh. That's when Kovacs really did come alive. He started putting in the lap times, and there wasn't really much that McIntosh could do about it. McIntosh kind of needs to do that, but he needs to get off to a very, very good start to do so. And they'll start to line up 2 by 2. Leo Hirvonen there, of course, in 3rd place. He's going to be looking for a much better start this time around.
Yeah, he has the top 3. Sorry for cutting you off there. No, he has the pace to keep up the top 3 for absolute definite. It's what I wanted to say before the start of the last race as well. Like, if you're in P1, getting a good start's always important, but even more so here with the way that T1 is and the way it kind of like it starts off shallow and kind of tightens on exit, it really does open up. A kind of a more passing opportunities for a car, even just slightly behind. So getting a good start is even more crucial than normal, I'd say, around here.
Well, here we go then. It's time for the second race of the evening at Oulton Park. It's later in the day. It's 6 past 4 in the evening. And we're about to go racing for another 30 minutes. GT3s, GT4s on the grid. Up towards the timing line now for the start of race 2. We're green for the second race of the championship. And it looks like McIntosh has got a much better start this time round. Doesn't go as wide as he initially did on the first race. Leo Hirvonen lost a place at the start, but more crucially, he hasn't gone around at turn 1 like he did earlier on, everyone seems to have got away much cleaner for the second start of the race. No chaos yet as we come through the first 3 corners.
It might have just been me, but I think we did see one of the McLarens actually go around, but I might be mistaken. Well, Felix at the back of the grid, but let's see, McIntosh, he has held on to P1 this time round. I wonder if he could kind of replicate what Kovacs did in the first race, just kind of maintain a gap, keep steady under pressure, and manage the the traffic as best they can. Because traffic is a genuine strategy when there's no, especially when there's no mandatory pit stops. Evelyn has lost the space to the Mercedes behind him, but I'm watching Thiago Lima at the moment, Martin Loic. Lima has kind of split the two. Obviously, in the first race, we did see a massive battle. Parker will be looking on the inside, but I think Lima has just benefited from the first lap chaos. With Killian Ryan meaning on the back of Cormac. Actually, with Gergo Panka in the McLaren.
Oh, there was a GT4 off in the background as well at the second chicane. I'm not entirely sure who that was, but there was definitely car off on the grass, and was it Felix again who might have gone off. I believe it was, and well, that's kind of unfortunate for Felix, not having a great start to his second race, and he's actually disappeared off the timing board entirely, so I think that might be race over for him for the second time today. Unfortunate to see, but McIntosh does lead down towards turn 3 on the second lap. Leo Hirvonen, meanwhile, making his way past Despres and up into 3rd place. Didn't have a great start to the first race, but this time Hirvonen in the NSX making his presence known up into the podium places, and now he can set his sights on the 2 Porsches ahead.
Absolutely. It seems very similar before, where the Porsches are seeming to be pulling a gap, but don't discount Hirvonen. He is very quick in the NSX. It seems like the NSX is strong around here, as we're seeing Lawrence as well. Still leading the GT4 pack, but it looks like Lima is starting to inch in, so I wonder if Lima had some kind of thing befall them in the first race, but we could be seeing a 3-way battle for the lead of the GT4s. I'm seeing Hirvonen, he is eating a little bit into the gap, it seems, but I'll just keep a close eye on, see how they actually do manage their time in the second race. On board with Kovacs at the moment, catching up to McIntosh. McIntosh is maintaining the lead. It's like a complete kind of it's like these drivers are playing Uno and playing the reverse card, playing the switch. It's basically the no you.
It is roles reversed indeed, and here comes George Boothby as well. He finished 4th in the first race, and he's going to look to move himself up into 4th. Of course, he did drop off the back of Despres in race 1. Not looking to do so here, and he's looking to find a way past the Mercedes at this point in time in that side Max Motorworks McLaren. Meanwhile, the Ginetta in the sandwich at the front between the likes of the Camaro and the BMW, but right behind them, Charlie Crossland is just behind the likes of Killian Ryan Meenan. Of course, he finished ahead of Killian in race 1. He'll be looking to do that again in race 2. And this little Ginetta of Thiago Lima, it's keeping pace and it's putting a bit of pressure on the Camaro of Martin Lawrence. And I tell you what, you couldn't get 2 cars with completely different designs, could you? The enormous V8 in that Camaro compared to the tiny little Ford engine in the Ginetta. But you know what? At Oulton Park, well, straight line speed isn't really too much of a problem, and a nimble car is very handy around here. The Ginetta does just fine.
Absolutely. This track's mainly about mechanical grip as opposed to aerodynamics, so the GT4s are a lot of fun to drive, especially the Ginetta. As you say, it's really, really small, and that is going to play to its advantage in terms of overtaking as well, as we're seeing Gergo Panka going into the first chicane. He's defending against the Porsche behind him. Can't quite see exactly who that actually is, but
I think it's Cormac Ryan Meenan. I think it is. Yeah, it is at the back of the grid. He's lost a couple of places, though, because the timing board hasn't quite updated yet. So Cormac has definitely made a mistake at some point in time. Meanwhile, back up at the front of the grid, it's still McIntosh leading from Kovacs and Hirvonen then in 3rd place. And George Boothby just dropping off a bit from Despres, it would seem. And of course, these guys will catch the GT4s again, kind of towards the middle point of this race, coming, into the second half. And that's when things get really, really interesting. But things are still very, very interesting at this point in time, as Rupert, just a bit concealed by the trees here at Oulton Park, is trying to find his way past the likes of Alexander Guglia, but that Jag not going to be willing to move over. And you know, let's not forget, Guglia had a fantastic performance in the first race as the Ferrari of Eros has been off, and that car's got front end damage on it to boot. It looked pretty good at this point in time. Does he just go wide on the exit? Yes, he does. On the grass, uses it and into the tyre barrier. And that's a self-inflicted incident there from Eros. And that's how easy it is to lose it around here at Oulton Park. The grass, I mean, the grass feels like ice around here.
It really, really does. So you do not want to get a tie off. I think you can kind of get away with it in some of the GT4s, but in the GT3s for absolute certain. I think it's combined with like some of the bumps on the track and the way the car just kind of rises and falls and loses grip. As we see the 107 Bentley try to make a move on Toth. Tries to go on the outside, but I think he gets a little bit punished for it. He loses a bit of time, and that allows Boardman to catch up a little bit. We did see Svenček make a move on Boardman a bit earlier in the earlier stages of this race. We see Stesnes getting very, very close to Boardman as well. Looks like the Bentley is holding up. Stesnes is going to move over to the inside of T2. Goes over the curb. A little bit of time, but maybe... Yeah, we're going to ride through Cascades as well, so he's got to drop back just a little bit, and there's going to be no real change of orders. We see Eros just understeering a little bit through Cascades in the background there. And Svenček will be looking to make that gap up all over again as we watch you feel it up. But Fekete is having a much better race than he did in race 1, obviously. It was not his race. We see Parker going up the inside of Lima. And on the outside of Cascades now, the road kind of switches back on itself. He's got to fall back just a little bit, and that's not going to stick, but that has just pushed Parker into the clutches of Killian Ryan Meaning as well, who is going to dive to that side of the track into really trying to find some kind of pathway through, but going into the hairpin. Can he get the... It's going to be all about the exit here, but I don't think there's going to be quite enough space. Parker knows better than that. He's just in the right position just to block off Killian, but he has been backed up quite a bit, and that's just brought Killian right into the fray for the top 4 of the GT4 class.
James Parker finding himself in a very, very different situation to what he was in race 1. As Andre Felix, we can just see here, is back in the pit lane, so that's going to be his race over in the GT4 class for the second time today, unfortunately. And Alan Garland is way back as well, so something has definitely happened to that Aston Martin. But James Parker... well, he had a Camaro in front of him in race 1 that was being a bit of a pain. He did eventually manage to get past, but now he's got a completely different car just in front of him, and, well, the size and proportions completely different of this car, and the driver is even different as well. Thiago Lima doing a very good job in that little Ginetta, and James Parker has also kind of just found himself in the odd position of not being able to pressure Lawrence this early on like he was in the first race. And this could be crucial because this is giving Lawrence time to see if he can maybe pull away from the Ginetta. It's not quite happening at the moment. And Charlie Crossland still chasing down the likes of Killian Ryan, and it's almost a train of 5 cars for the lead of the race. They're not all as close as they probably could be. But any one of these 5 could probably win this race if things go the right way for them.
Absolutely, and don't discount that when the GT3s come back through as well. We saw exactly what kind of destruction that caused in the first race, so don't discount that as well. As we see, is it Stesnes looking at the inside of Bob and thinks a little bit better of it, and just drops just a little bit back. Time to kind of contemplate, kind of follow, make another, just trying to look at making another move. He does not want to pick up another 15-second time penalty like in the first race, but obviously it's a fresh start. A little bit of a wiggle on exit there, but absolutely no harm done. Parker is going to look at the inside of the chicane, does think better of it. He's got to I don't blame him for wanting to try and make a move a little bit early. Obviously, Killian is closing up quite a bit. Felix Ruppert having a little bit of clean air as well. So I wonder if something's happened there. And indeed it has. There's a spin coming out of into the third sector, and that's not what you want to see.
Yeah, reversing it onto the circuit there and getting himself back and going again. Unfortunate there for Ruppert. He was involved in a couple of incidents, I think it was, in the first race. Meanwhile, back to the present, James Parker dropping off a bit from the Ginetta and falling more and more into the clutches of the McLaren. And it's great to see, isn't it? Look at this, 5 different manufacturers here, pretty much at the front of the GT4 field. It's absolutely fantastic to see. Meanwhile, nothing has changed out in front. McIntosh in the GT3 class has pulled out a bit of a gap on Kovacs, and very, very interesting. A different dynamic to what we had in the first race. Roles reversed for sure on those guys, and the GT4 field haven't even been caught up yet. So very interesting to see how all of that will play out. Meanwhile, Woolmer for the XL Racing Renwelton team chasing down Crowbar at the moment. And of course, he's got Toth behind him as well. And you can kind of just see, you know, based on the track map, all of these guys are just bunched up into little groups. And this is kind of what happens at Oulton Park. Everyone kind of gets bunched up into a little group, or if you're on your own, you're pretty much on your own for the rest of the race. And you know, these groups are going to eventually be disrupted. Once the GT3s come up to lap the GT4s, it's going to be all about traffic management to see who can make the best out of it.
Absolutely. There's not a lot of space to let traffic by, so it's really, really difficult to kind of pick your moment, kind of lose as little time as possible, and hope that especially if you're in Parker's position at the moment, trying to let the GT3s by in a spot where you don't lose that much time, but hopefully that the GT3 car catches the car in front at a really, really bad moment and causes them to lose more time as well, so you kind of close that gap just a little bit. I think the GT3s have actually caught the GT4s a little bit earlier this time as well, but then again, we did see I
think
R101 drop back just a little bit.
It's just Garland, but this is James Parker. And James Parker trying up the inside of Thiago Lima. The Ginetta's not going to have it. Here comes Killian Ryan Meenan, by the way, on the inside of turn 3. Is he going to get the move done? Yes, he is.
There's a little bit of contact going through there, but that was a really, really good move. I think there's a tiny, tiny little touch, but that was a really, really good move. And I think Killian is now well and truly into the fray for the fight for the top, as we say, perhaps even for the lead. But Lawrence is
Crossland as well, looking interested on James Parker. James Parker maybe losing a bit of composure, getting a bit flustered. Not what you'd usually see from someone as composed. Meanwhile, Martin Lawrence out in front. This is the most relaxed he's been all evening.
Yeah, it's just he has made quite a bit of a gap up. But again, the traffic can change that. I mean, we've still got 16 minutes of the race left to go, and it's by far not decided just quite yet.
Yeah, I think the GT4 traffic that was caught up earlier by the 2 leading Porsches was Garland all the way at the back of the grid. He's about 11 seconds off the back of the GT4 field. But the 2 Porsches are now starting to catch the rest of the GT4 field. In fact, they're about to catch Matt Samuel and Cormac Ryan Meenan. Just see them in the background there. These 2 Porsches haven't had the greatest of times out in the second race, and well, they did qualify towards the back of the grid. Maybe the Cayman just not that good around here at Oulton Park, and it'll be interesting to see how they do at Donington Park later on in a week's time. And of course, we'll be going to Brands Hatch later on with Snetterton on the calendar as well. Killian Ryan Meenan wide into turn 3. That's going to give James Parker that 3rd place in GT4 back. James Parker says, I'll take a freebie any day of the week, and especially on a Monday night when the field is as competitive as this.
Absolutely. We have seen Kovacs. He was a little bit behind McIntosh at the start of the race, but he has really kind of caught the gap. I wonder if traffic has had something to play with that. A little bit of a wiggle getting past Harry Conway there. I think that's just made it stick, and that maybe can just pull a little bit more of a gap. Kovacs getting a little bit held up by Conway on the exit there, and that's what I mean. That is exactly what I mean by traffic management. Trying to use it to your advantage, trying to cause the car behind to kind of just lose a little bit of time to the slower cars. And you know, it's like, no offense to the slower cars, they are 2 different classes of car. There is going to be a speed difference, but strategy comes into it a lot more than what it might actually seem. To see Woolmer making his way around the hairpins, catching up to Crowbar. We're looking on the back of Horvath's Mercedes' wing now, and on board with Toth as well. There's a little bit of a pain train going on there as well. So, as you said before, you just get these packs of cars, and they just kind of stick together for the entire race, and that just makes it even more thrilling for us to watch.
It definitely does. These short races, really, really exciting for us, and especially considering they only really catch the GT4s once throughout the course of this 30-minute race. Kind of means that they have one shot at getting their traffic management right, and kind of adds a bit more pressure to that element as well. Martin Lawrence is clearing these guys behind him at this point. Second race going much smoother for the Camaro. And of course, Thiago Lima doing a fantastic job in the little Ginetta at the moment. James Parker, now the car behind him again. You know what? If it had to be between James Parker or Killian Ryan Meenan behind me, I don't know which one I'd rather have. It's pick your poison, but both are going to probably do as much damage as the other. So late on the brakes from the BMW when we're looking on the onboard there. And James Parker just losing a bit of time there. I think he was just a bit too late. Killian Ryan Meenan going to catch up, going to be later on the brakes than the BMW, but nothing going into the second chicane.
No, Parker just closes the door there. Really, really well defended. There wasn't really the space to go, but we have got the leaders of the GT3s actually catching up to the leaders of the GT4. So this is where it gets interesting. This is where both these races can be won or lost. This is where the strategy and the timings and the paces all come into play. Lawrence,
and it hasn't worked out for McIntosh either. He got held up, and that gap has closed up. Kovac's right on the back of him now. And he's still got more traffic. Oh, almost into the back of James Parker. The two GT4s are going wide as well, as the two GT3 leaders try and make their way through. I think Kovac's had to take some avoiding action there. That's cost him a bit of time. McIntosh has cleared the little pack. Kovac's is held up by the Ginetta. He's probably thinking, get out of the way. I need to catch up to the guy in front. But McIntosh initially held up because of the GT4s. Then it works back against in his advantage, and the gap is re-established at half a second. Meanwhile, Martin Lawrence just out in front is the one they need to clear now, coming up towards the hairpin. They will clear him at the hairpin. Kovacs goes wide, but it seems like both of them have cleared the GT4 field fairly safely. Meanwhile, Charlie Crossland's still trying to put pressure on Killian Ryan Meenan, but no luck going there. Harry Conway's got a 5-second penalty as well to kind of add to what probably hasn't been the greatest race for him. I think going a bit better than race one, but still 5-second penalty. Not really what he wanted to see. Two Mercedes into one, doesn't go in the first chicane. They're going to go side by side. It's going to be places lost for Toth, and Hobart will carry on. And, well, stewards will have a good look into that one. I'm not really sure if there'll be too much going. We didn't have too many penalties coming out in the first race. I think the only penalty that did come out was a 15-second penalty for car number 215, I think it was. No, car number 30, sorry, in the first race. We've had one penalty out as well for Harry Conway so far. So fairly clean, in fact, for a multi-class race around the circuit this small.
Yeah, absolutely. It's surprisingly so. It is what you want to see. You want to see the kind of, as difficult as it is to kind of, for the drivers to kind of race as cleanly and fair as possible with it being so tight. It is what you want to see. And it looks like we see Walmouth making a bit of a move at the 4-bar, going too wide into turn one. There is the, I think that's, who is that in the GT4 ahead? Obviously, I thought that was, yeah.
Sundstrom ahead, so.
Yeah, sorry, it's so difficult.
He's just moving out of the way, Mikhail Sundstrom. He doesn't want to get involved in any of this.
Looking in your mirrors and having to take the opportunity to catch a little bit of a breather. Toth and Sejnek going too wide. It looks like the Toth has been pushed back into Boardman as well. Little bit of a spin down for the Bentley there, but Toth, is he going to concede? I don't think he is. There's a bit of a cluster going on.
Oh, there's definitely going to be a steward's look into that. And, well, oh, yeah, just on the inside. Not enough room there for the Mercedes to get up on the inside of the Bentley. I don't really think Svenchek did anything wrong there. I don't really think he could have done anything different, but Toth might be looking at a penalty from the stewards.
I think he just looked to get in the nose in just a little bit much and just misjudged it oh so slightly, but that's all it takes sometimes, and sadly Googly dropped down into 15th, but looking to make a move on Eros at the moment. Obviously Eros is maybe still kind of damaged, but as Googly goes wide anyway, and some of the GT4's overtaking, but yeah, that means that Googly has more work to do to kind of pick up the pace. So as we got back to the leaders, Kovacs picks right up to the back of McIntosh. This race still isn't over with 9 minutes left to go, so this is still anybody's race. This has gone more down to the wire for the actual lead of the overall race than the race one has. So
yeah, they've cleared the traffic really well in this race, the GT3s, and well, things have changed up in GT4 as well. James Parker has made his way past the Ginetta, and the Ginetta's lost time as well. Killian Ryan Meenan, where's he disappeared to in all of this? I think he's behind Charlie Crossland now, so Killian's lost a lot of time. And in fact, he's dropped a few places to Torvinen and Sundstrom as well. Now finds Guglia just trying to lap him, and Harry Conway is... there's history between these two. I'll leave it at that with Harry Conway and Killian Ryan Meenan, and it involves the Dipper at Bathurst, and there was a Lamborghini involved in the middle, but Killian Ryan Meenan, something's definitely happened to that number 23 car. We didn't catch it on camera, but the GT4s have spread themselves out a bit, but unfortunate for Ryan Meenan, going to have to try and claw whatever he can back out of this race. Meanwhile, James Parker, he's got more GT3 traffic troubling him at the moment. He can see Martin Lawrence up the road, but I think Martin Lawrence is way too far up the road for James Parker to catch him in the second race. So it might be roles reversed in both races for the GT3 and the GT4 class as Robart. Bit of a half spin coming out of the final corner.
Yeah, very, very lucky to catch that. You don't want to lose it with so many cars behind you, especially now. We got Walmouth. A little bit of closing speed going into the braking zone, but it kind of equalizes out, so I don't think we're going to see any kind of move going into the next couple of turns, but he does have Parker in front of him as well, and Parker is kind of holding his own a little bit against some of the GT3s. He's letting them bear a sensible. I think that is...
Stenazis. That's Stenazis off.
Stenazis, yeah, and the 911 just going a little bit wide at Cascades there. Swatch, but yeah, just Stenazis again. And that's just pushed him right into Svenchek as well. And obviously Svenchek had a little bit of bad luck before them around here in the previous laps, but Lawrence being pushed a little bit wide. I wonder if that's going to give Parker a slight opportunity to maybe catch up, but that gap is absolutely monumental at this point. Lawrence has done a really, really great job kind of building that up in the first place.
Thiago Lima helped out a lot with that, the Ginetta holding up the likes of James Parker in the BMW. It's a 3.1 second gap between Martin Lawrence and James Parker. George Boothby, meanwhile, he fell off the back of Despress again. And, well, he had a fairly comfortable fourth place finish in the first race. Doesn't look like it's going to be as comfortable as the McLaren. Looks like it's going to be under pressure from two Aston Martins, Lukaszek and Steele Vason, both of them trying to chase down the McLaren. Battle of the British manufacturers, and the Aston Martins flying in formation after their rival.
Absolutely back on with the leaders as well. It's like this gap is still not closing, but there's 5 minutes left to go. I wonder if we're going to see something like we saw with the GT4s in the last race, just going down to, or just down to kind of pressuring the driver in front and seeing if McIntosh makes an error, in much of the same way that Lawrence did the last lap as well. But I think both drivers have learnt their lessons from the last race, and I doubt they'll be willing to let anything like that happen again. You can tell McIntosh wants this win. He wants to make up for what happened in the race before. So it's going to be really just to see how he holds on to that. But we have Bournemouth, again, catching into the back of Hobart just a little bit. Hobart obviously carrying a little bit of damage as well from the two Mercedes into one hole, which doesn't quite go, but I don't think it's affecting his performance too badly, so he might...
Yeah, just a few scratches, it seems, on that rear wing. Doesn't really seem to be too much. I mean, top speed isn't really your biggest focus around here anyway. Yeah, that Mercedes doesn't look too... Well, I'd say it doesn't look too badly damaged. It's, maybe its handling isn't exactly perfect. Just Robart going a bit off track there, and that's going to allow Woolmouth to catch up ever so slightly.
And that's exactly what it's going to be looking for, is to see Boothby. He's holding off Lukacek, but not really too big of a gap between them. But there is the trade of 3 cars. You got Steele Bassett, you got Lukacek and Boothby leading the small little train there with the 2 Astons, and Lukacek getting a little bit close there through Cascades, and then going follow 3 by 3.
Oh, George Boothby though, 15-second penalty. Just been handed out by the stewards. So that's going to have been for an incident that we didn't quite catch. That was for an incident on lap 10, so that was 6 laps ago. The stewards just a bit behind on a couple of these incidents, but that was the 778 that he was involved in. And as I look down the order, the 778 does not appear to be on... Oh, that's Gergo Panker in the McLaren in the GT4. So... now was that why Gergo Panker lost places to Cormac and Matt Samuel earlier, I wonder? So, George Boothby obviously got involved in a little bit of an accident there with someone in a different class. And of course, the stewards haven't looked upon that very nicely, and well, naturally they don't. Incidents between cars in different classes should never occur. And George Boothby, unfortunately, now has a 15-second time penalty. What this means for Lukacek and Steele Vason, well, they're dropping off the back of the McLaren. George Boothby's been given a penalty, and he's decided he's going to kick the McLaren into 7th gear. Meanwhile, the 2 Aston Martins squabbling behind, they're pretty much competing for 5th place at the moment, unless George Boothby can pull out a miracle in 3 minutes and stretch 15 seconds.
Well, given the way they're going at it, that could actually be possible, but very unlikely. As we're looking at the back of Torvinen's car, we have Sundstrom in the Mercedes, followed very closely by Killian Raimini. He'd be looking to make back as much of the space as he can, looking down on the inside, returns to the outside, just gets squeezed out wide, and not quite going to make that move stick, but Killian does have the pace to make something happen in the next couple of laps, and we are going to be in the closing stages soon. Only 2 minutes of the race remaining. Let's look at Thiago Lima fending off Crossland as well for P19, which is still 3rd place for the GT4, so still fighting for that still fighting for that bottom step of the podium. So Crossland will be looking to make as much as he can with that. And we see McIntosh still fending off Kovacs. Kovacs looking to, again, in much of the same way, try to make something happen in the final 2 minutes of the race.
Yeah, Kovacs had a rather comfortable win after the halfway mark of the first race. It was pretty much plain sailing for him. McIntosh not going to be given the same liberty in race 2. He does have the chance to win still, though. Martin Lawrence, of course, still leads in the GT4 class. James Parker has caught up 1.4 seconds since we last saw these two. But 1.7 seconds in less than 2 minutes, it's not going to be enough unless Martin Lawrence makes some mistakes, but he's got no pressure on him at the moment to make those mistakes. Charlie Crossland, he's looking for a 2nd podium of the day in the Aston Martin, chasing down Thiago Lima's Ginetta, which had the chance to take 2nd place. Doesn't look like he'll be doing so at this point in time. Meanwhile, Jarkko Torvinen a bit further back. There was someone off going through the escape road.
I think that was
the second chicane. Sundstrom's got damage.
I wonder if something happened between Killian and Sundstrom, because I think it was Killian who took the escape road. It looks like he just tried through to the outside and just got a little bit of a nudge there. Just not a whole lot of space. And Stewart will be looking at that one as well, but that's a shame. Sundstrom didn't do so well in the first race either, I don't think, and it's the last thing he needed. That's really upsetting to see.
Yeah, Mikael Sundstrom didn't have a great first race, and, well, that hasn't really done much for his efforts in the second race. Killian Raiminen hasn't had a great second race either, and, of course, now he's put a steward's inquiry in, basically. Meanwhile, the GT3s, this is the final lap for their race. And here we go then. So Porsche versus Porsche, the way it was in race 1, roles reversed, but no 5-second gap between the two of them this time round. It's less than half a second. Can Kovacs pull off a do-or-die move in the final lap to get past the number 15 of McIntosh? Or will he play it safe, do you wonder? Just take the podium, take the second position while you can, and just deal with it over the course of the rest of the championship. Meanwhile, Cormac Ryan Minnan trying to make his way past Mikael Sundstrom, and this is going to hold up the GT3 leaders. McIntosh almost into the back of the Cayman in the hairpin. Cormac moves out of the way. Now it's Sundstrom that they've got to clear. I wasn't expecting them to catch them for a second time, but Cormac and Sundstrom's races just have not gone their way. Sundstrom does move out of the way. Matt Samuel is just up ahead of these guys as well. Entirely possible that if they catch him at the wrong part of the track, he could still play a part in all of this as we come up towards Druids on this occasion. I think Matt Samuel is far enough out of the way. Kovac's flashing the lights. He's saying, get out the way, don't hold me up, I still have a chance, and slightly loses it. Going through Druids, that looks like it. McIntosh, he has survived for these 30 minutes, and the number 15 comes out of the final corner. It's going to be 2 Porsches winning in the first round of the championship, but 2 different Porsches winning across both races. Fantastic from both of those to see as well.
Absolutely. We won't be seeing a final lap move with Stenazis and Boardman as well in the Aston. Boardman holding off just about, but contact as Stenazis tries to take the inside. A little bit of a late dive potentially. Stood off to take a look at that, but it seemed like Bobbin couldn't actually react too much to it, but that is just played into Eros's favour as well, making up 2 places at once, making up for a little bit of that mistake from earlier on in the race, taking just into the top 10, so he'll be really proud of that.
Fantastic from Eros there, capitalising on the mistake of 2 drivers. Meanwhile, GT4's hasn't quite been decided yet, but Martin Lawrence is definitely going to be the race leader. What's happened to James Parker, though? James Parker's down into 4th. Something has happened to the BMW late in this race. Charlie Crossland is up into 2nd. And we are going to get a bit of... This is much further back, though. This is after James Parker has obviously had some sort of incident. This is him trying to get past the Ginetta, not quite being able to do so. Martin Lawrence, in the meantime, is crossing the line to take a win in the second race of GT4. Charlie Crossland will cross the line to take 2nd in the second race. Thiago Lima will round out the podium. James Parker denied a 2nd place on the final lap for an incident or mistake that we did not see. And Jarkko Torvinen quite slow across the line. I'm wondering if that Ginetta maybe just ran out of fuel as we came to the end of the race.
Quite possibly. Obviously, underfueling is kind of something, you want to kind of eke out as much from the car as you can, and sometimes that is kind of a downside to happening. It wouldn't be the first time we've seen a driver run out of fuel on the last lap, and it will not be the last. So we're looking through the orders of the races now, the results of the races of race 2 now, the GT3. McIntosh did win the overall there. Great race from Hervinen as well. I mean, couldn't have gone much worse for him in the first race, but he more than made up for it in the second. And again, last lap, GT4, position changes for the podium. Oh, God, you can't get enough of it, can you?
Yeah, well, James Parker, who won the first race, we were expecting that maybe it would be roles reversed as it was in GT3 for GT4. Doesn't turn out to be the case, as Martin Lawrence takes the win from Charlie Crossland, and then Thiago Lima. James Parker denied a podium. But that brings an hour of racing across 2 30-minute races to an end for this evening. Absolutely fantastic action. I mean, if you weren't entertained from the 2 30-minute races we had tonight, then I think you'll struggle to find, better multi-class racing anywhere around. And absolutely fantastic what we saw here today. We'll be back in a week's time, of course, for Donington Park round 2. 2 30-minute races there as well. So that could definitely spice things up. Donington, a much calmer track for multi-class racing, but it's still going to offer up plenty of excitement. Such a fast-flowing circuit as well. Other stuff that's going to be happening this week, of course, we do have the start of the Thursday GT4 Championship. Not entirely sure if we've got confirmation on whether that will be live streamed or not. We do have round 3 of the World GT3 Championship. That's going to be at Mount Panorama for round 3. I'll have Jesse Lee in the box alongside me. Nick Setnik will be behind the cameras. And then, of course, on Saturday, Night Owl returns for Season 3. The first round kicking off. You'll have Jesse Lee, Josh Lation, and Nick Setnik behind all of the commentary and broadcasting work for that race as well. And of course, like we said, we will be back in a week's time for the second round of the British GT Championship. Well, it's been 2 incredible races. It's been an absolute joy to cast these 2 races. Thank you very much to Joshua for joining me here for the first round of the championship. Thank you to Jake Coombs. Fantastic job behind the cameras here today. The man had to find so much action, and, you know, lost at times he was, definitely delivered and showed us so much of an amazing race. And thank you to the stewards here tonight as well. They've done a fantastic job with the live stewarding. But we will be back in a week's time for the second round of the British GT Championship. But from all of us here at Racing Club International, we hope you've enjoyed the stream and enjoy the rest of your evening.